Going to link a little bit to last week, because it was that massive, and you get to the stage where you know, after about an hour and a half, I could have gone on all day, you get a bit brain dead. So I didn't. I'll be touching in how Europol in particular are looking at counterterrorism, because they're linked. Because we'll look at serious organised crime. I say serious so we know it's sexy stuff, drug trafficking, people trafficking, firearms trafficking and so on. But we'll also be mentioning responsibility, because they're linked when we look at some documents to counter-terrorism as well. So last week we looked at terrorism more in detail, and another one I'll keep you posted for. Being the media darling I'm becoming, I might be in the media again a little bit later today, but I'll keep you posted on that one. But Ireland, there you go. Told you last week, Ireland's not gone away. Okay, it's not gone away. So that's what we're going to look at. I keep saying serious organised crime, but it's organised crime. We are talking, as I said, drug trafficking. Not just a bit of drug dealing, drug trafficking. We're talking about the Mr. Big, as the papers always put it. The leader of the underworld. I'd love to go to this underworld. Is there a big fuck-off cave where everyone is? But this is what we're talking about. Major criminals who make billions. Okay? Not just millions. This is a multi-billion pound stroke euros, things we're talking about the EU, industry. It's one that you may consider as a career if you don't get a job, because it does pay well. It's got a few risks to it though. One risk, you could get caught and get a long sentence in prison. Perhaps another risk that may put you off, certainly if you want to do a bit of drug trafficking with mega drug dealing, make sure you don't encroach on a company that's already operating. They don't like it, they tend to shoot you. Okay, these are the sort of criminals we're talking about. There's no messing with them, they're ruthless people, but it can pay well. It could be a short-term career, but don't forget, don't think, I've been arrested, I've got millions in the bank. The Proceeds of Crime Act in the UK and similar acts in the member states of the EU will take your money off you as well, and we'll see some examples of that. So that's the crime we're talking about. Now, it's a realisation that these crimes don't happen in just one state or just one area of a state. These are global crimes. If you look at drug trafficking, okay, amphetamines can be produced within the EU's borders, and they are, for circulation in the EU, in other member states, and maybe beyond. Then we look at opiates. I don't know if you've, and we look at opiates and perhaps cannabis, right? Has anybody here tried to grow a lot of poppies at this time of year? It doesn't happen. It's freezing out there at the moment. I don't know if you know. That's why I got my pulley on. And just like my mum said, I got my vest on. When it's cold, so you don't catch cold. You can't do it. Has anyone here, I mean, just be honest, it's a safe learning environment. I know it's on film, it may go global, but has anyone here tried to grow cannabis? Right? Go in the garden, you get your lettuces, perhaps a few flowers, and a bit of cannabis. And it won't grow. It's not the right environment. However, as you may have noticed in Liverpool over the last few weeks, the major crime units around here have had some success of cannabis farms, normally in the loft of a house, being converted with, obviously needs electricity up there and heaters, and these nice little five-fingered leaf plants grow, and they can make a lot of money. But generally, you have to go to another state. Okay, so poppy fields, and we look at the likes of Afghanistan. One of the problems in Afghanistan that the British troops found, certainly from 2004, when they obviously drew the short straw, with your 1,000 soldiers, can you look after Helmand province, wasn't so much the Taliban, it was the drugs warlords. They've been a big problem, are still a big problem in Afghanistan. They're not Taliban, they're not Al-Qaeda, they're not terrorists. They grow poppies, they make a lot of money and export it to the West so it can be refined into the various opiates they want to sell on the streets. So we can already see you need to go to another country outside the EU, and how it's then brought over and distributed. This is an important factor. It's going to take more than one state. So that's a realization. Trafficking in human beings, it's the same thing. You can have people brought over from China, and we've seen that in the UK with the cockle pickers who died a few years ago. They were in Dean Road in Liverpool. I don't know if you've been to Dean Road, it's just off Edge Lane. So perhaps you're passing out, going to the M62, you'll pass Dean Road. Old Victorian houses. And there were about 60 people living in that house. Just mattresses on the floor, 2 shifts, 2 12-hour shifts, and they were taken out to Morecambe Bay. So it's not just about the sex trade, there's also the sweatshop trade, if you like, the slave labour. They came from China. There are people from states in the former Soviet Union, like Ukraine, Eastern Europe, Philippines, Far East, mainly women and children who are brought in and end up in the sex trade. That's the sort of crime we're talking about. And it's a multi-billion-pound profit. So realisation comes in the EU, police forces can't work on this on their own. They've got to work together. So documents have helped with it. Treaty of European Union, we see it in Article 30. There must be cooperation. I've outlined them in detail for you in your notes. But in essence, what it is, it's the EU, Justice and Home Affairs, putting in together the facility on both a legislative format through the treaties and, as we saw with Europol, how they operate, as they act like a conduit to help policing agencies in different states work together. They coordinate and assist and look at intelligence and help each other. And that realisation came. The Vienna Action Plan, I've put that down for you as well, that followed obviously the Treaty of Union. You can see the big emphasis on working together. And it's working together, and I've mentioned that you can see organised crime. I've highlighted that for you. And organised crime, they've also mentioned trafficking in human beings and corruption and terrorism. Because we saw last week, certainly with international terrorism, it's not just one state. Again, as we saw again last week, you can break it into two. ETA's never been a threat to the UK, it's a Spanish problem, but now they work together. Like with Ireland, they will work together. Ireland, the groups, the distant groups, and it's what I must be saying later on if the press do want to follow it up. We saw Michael Campbell being convicted in Lithuania a couple of months ago. In case you're wondering who Michael Campbell is, he's a member of the real IRA. He had to go to Lithuania to go and buy explosives and firearms, updated explosives and firearms that the real IRA wanted to use to attack targets on mainland Britain. So you can see, although there's the real IRA in 6 northern counties, it's only a small area, and perhaps we expand that over the Irish Sea 90 miles away to mainland Britain, there's an international connection. They've got to go somewhere else to get these firearms and explosives. It's got to be at the right price, and it's got to be what they want. So this is why this cooperation is so important. So when we look at organised crime, we've got to look at, well, what is organised crime? How do we define it? Because we could, if we wanted to, all of us in here become an organised criminal group, and we just want to do a one-off, and we want to do the Lloyds TSB Bank round the corner. We've sussed out, we've got someone on the inside, and we're going to go and do the bank at the weekend, because we've heard also they're going to have millions of pounds in there, and I think £20 million share between us, we'd still have a few bob. It wouldn't be too bad, would it? We'd certainly have a good weekend on it between us. Are we an organised crime group for the purposes of the UN and the EU? No. Why do you think we're not an organised crime group? Although we'll organise it, we'll plan it, we'll work together, we've all got different skills. Why are we not an organised crime group, do you think, for what we're talking about today? First time, it's a one-off. So it's got to be more than a one-off. We've got to be consistently committing this crime. So how many do you need? Well, the UN says 3 or more. That's all you need, 3 or more persons. They've got to exist for a period of time, act in concert. Well, there's all this criminal law stuff coming back again. Okay, it's not having a concert with music and let's do a Bob Geldof and save the world. No, we're not doing that. It's about working together. We're looking at committing serious crimes and offences, and that's what we're looking for. The EU also has one. What was interesting is if you actually go on, and again I'll have links for you, go onto Europol's site, then when they do an organised crime assessment, they've actually looked at, well, what forms an organised group that for them to identify. It's got to be an international dimension, that's what I was just talking about. A group structure. Use of legitimate business structures. I'll go through these in a bit more detail. A specialisation, influence, use of violence and countermeasures. Let's take those in turn. An international dimension. I just mentioned people trafficking. Far East. So as soon as you mention another country, we have an international dimension. Even if it's within the EU, and say it's the UK, with Romania, we now have an international dimension because we're still national sovereign states all over within the EU. A group structure. What do you think that means, a group structure? Any idea?
Hierarchy.
A hierarchy, right? There's a hierarchy. I'm sure you've all seen The Godfather. Anyone not seen the Godfather films? Well, get watching them, right? I like the last one. That's my favourite. The last one, where Corleone's there. He's retired, and things are going wrong. And you can relate to this in many ways. He said, "Just when you think you're out of it, they drag you back in." Right? And that's the whole point. You can never get away from this. Yeah, there's a hierarchy. There is a leader. There's a management team. You might, for a couple of you looking at me, go, what? Oh no, there's a management team. You have financiers. Some will have a lawyer. Now that's something you could think of when you graduate. If you don't get a company or a chambers at the end of it, you might want to work for, say, the Liverpool drug trafficking group. They want a lawyer. Why do you think they want a lawyer? Well, yeah, there's the crime side. If they get caught, there were instant representations there. It's looking at other areas too, because there's a link here, legitimate business structures. I don't know if you've ever noticed, I mean, do you know, I come from Kensington and moved back into Kensington, and I often wonder, how do these tanning salons exist? They're open from 7 in the morning to 11 at night and hardly anyone's in there, but they employ people. And you look at various other businesses. What's that? How do they exist then? What do you think's going through my mind?
Drugs.
Yes, that's it. Sorry, drugs, there's a link somewhere, laundering money. Now I'm not saying every tanning salon or beauty shop or kebab shop in Kensington is connected with organised crime. I'm not saying that, I have no evidence of that, but that's the sort of thing they're looking at. Operating legitimate businesses through which to launder the money. Okay? Laundering money doesn't mean you nip down to Curry's, go and get yourself a washing machine and make it cleaner. No, that's not laundering money, that's just being stupid. It's about having legitimate business. This is what you need lawyers for. You need lawyers for a number of factors. So, not an ideal career move, but if you're hard up, it could be worth a try. But they will want things back in return, these criminals. You might be going, I want to be a lawyer to change the world. Well, you'll be changing it in a certain way if you're dealing with organised criminals. So they need to have legitimate business structures, and that's why to launder money. Specialisation, what do you think that is? Specialisation.
Certain crimes?
Certain crimes, it's as simple as that. Yeah, certain crimes. I suppose you could try the department store aspect of organised crime. You know, you can imagine, yes, ground floor, opiate drug trafficking, first floor, ladies' underwear and human trafficking, and then we go up to the next floor. We have a nice car showroom, all stolen, of course, high-powered vehicles, and to your right, take your pick of any firearms you wish to purchase. You could try that, but that's really going to expand you a bit. Most of them just specialise in one area, okay, one area. Influence, what do you think that is? Influence. Give you a clue, brown envelopes. What does that normally signify, brown envelopes? Bribes. Yeah, if we're going to be an organised crime group, we've got to remember we're not going to pay tax. Because you get me on this, unless it's your legitimate business one, of course. And of course, if you've got a good lawyer, a good tax lawyer, you won't pay any tax. But you don't go, oh God, it's end of January, it's my tax returns are due in. Occupation, major drug trafficker. Income, £6 billion. That's fucking 40% on 6 billion. Bastards, I'm paying for all them on the social from me drug trafficking. No, you're not going to tell the tax people, are you? So you're not going to pay tax. So that annoys governments a little bit. Okay, you're making billions, but you're not paying tax. So also premises, and we need to secure premises. We've also got to be careful of the police because they're a bit of a pain in the arse. They like to catch criminals, okay? So what do we need to do? Let's get some corruption out. Let's start bribing politicians, local government officials, okay? And police officers. Preferably also, we could, if there's a jury trial coming up, we can try and nobble it, get the 12 people. Bit of extortion, find out some dirt on them. We might get 1 or 2 in the jury too, even though it's so clear cut, we're guilty as hell, we'll get them to go, oh no, not guilty. We'll try and nobble them. That's what influence about corruption. Use of violence, well, you need security, don't you? Everybody's got security. You go to the Trafford Centre. Anyone not been to the Trafford Centre? Don't bother going. I wouldn't go. It's full of shops and it's boring. Well, some look at me going, I love shopping. It's retail therapy. It does me good. Yeah, it's horses for courses, of course, but you go, they've got security. Perhaps they don't use the violence that we're going to talk about. But we need, in our organised crime group, protect our own interests. And if that means taking out rival groups because they're encroaching on our patch, so be it. You know, it's that bit where you see in these old films in the States, the organised crime, where they'll be swimming with the fishes. Doesn't mean to say they're going to take up scuba diving. It means they put a bit of concrete on them and put them in the Hudson River and never be seen again. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Use of violence and taking people out. And countermeasures. Yes, criminals must be switched on, be they drug traffickers, people traffickers, or terrorists. Countermeasures is that. Counter-surveillance. I think I briefly mentioned, I may have mentioned it last week. Being counter-surveillance, because they know they're going to be watched. So how are you going to eliminate it? Okay? Counter-interviewing. They'll have skills. They'll have their own training courses, if you like, on how not to get caught. So those are, on those 7 groups there's quite a lot to consider with those. So how does it work within the EU? I've given a couple of examples. One is Italy. I mean, I picked Italy for obvious reasons. The Mafia. Anyone here not heard of the Mafia? Good, you've all heard of the Mafia. Okay? Where they all eat mama's pasta because they like it. And they all are good to their mum. Because you see it in the films. They all love the mum, don't they? Perhaps they hate the dad. They never mention the dad, but they love the mum. And they love their family. And they go to funerals, and there's fucking hundreds of them, and big limos turning up. You see it, don't you, on the films? The Mafia. And as I say, you watch the Godfather films. I don't think the Godfather films really glorifies the Mafia, but 1 or 2 other films are sort of, they're all right blokes. Oh, they fuck. They're vicious. Vicious. Absolutely vicious. It's about making money. Interesting report was only last week. Apparently, the profit made by the Mafia in Italy is larger than the gross national product of Italy itself. It was, I think it was a tongue-in-cheek suggestion to the Italian government Why don't you go to the Mafia and borrow some money off them? And the Mafia have been making money legitimately. One of their areas is, sorry?
Waste disposal.
Yes, waste disposal is one of them. Yes, waste. Let's not think about too much of what the waste is they're disposing of. That's one of them. Another one is in Italy, the loan shark business. It's more formalised and legitimate than here, than the loan shark business in the UK. They've made money from that. So they've made, not just illegally, they've been making money legally. And I think they had a gross profit of 19 billion in Italy last year. So that's a lot of money. Legitimate 19 billion. That's how we know, because they had to do the tax returns on the waste disposal and the loan shark business. So they're very rich and very powerful. In Italy, they obviously, for obvious reasons you can understand, they look at the Mafia as one group. They have legal definition of organised crime in two ways. One to deal with the Mafia, and one to deal with organised crime groups who are not in the Mafia. So they've actually had to do a little split. I put some clips on for you from YouTube to look at the Mafia at work. It's not the financing part, it's looking at how they actually operate and what they get up to on there. Germany has also got a definition. I've just picked a few countries I thought would be interesting. They have a legal definition, and again you'll see similarities. There's got to be a common will of committing offences. That means they all agree to commit this type of offence. A common sense of togetherness. All of the words are different. We're seeing a similarity in what we've just been looking at. 3 or more persons, there's the UN bit, so we need 3 or more. Hierarchical organisation which undertakes legal operations for a prolonged period of time. What they've actually looked at, the German Supreme Court, and I'll put that there on page 6 for you, gave some indicators to help. Okay? So you look at the preparation and planning of the offence, the execution of the offence, the financial aspects to it. This is what's making it really serious, the amount of money. Conspiracy-like behaviour, group structure, and so on. The whole list is there. Again, just what we were talking about with Europol's 7 aspects they look at, trying to identify an organised criminal group. I couldn't help myself there, my little picture of that little dog with Plitz eye on it. I always thought they used German Shepherds, but obviously there must be financial cuts with the German police. It looks like a Shih Tzu. Now, do you know what a Shih Tzu is? It's a zoo with no animals. Right. God, I've been passed you by then. Right, so Germany's looking at it. Of course, Germany has a slightly interesting history. I've put a group down there, the Bundesgrenzschutz, GSG9 for short. They were formed after the Munich Games in '72 when Israeli athletes were kidnapped and killed by the PLO. Because obviously after the Second World War, there's a bit of resistance to Germany having an armed forces again. We didn't want to go for 3rd time, and perhaps the Germans thinking 3rd time lucky we'll conquer Europe. So they restricted what could exist in the old West Germany. As a result of Munich, GSG9 was formed, and they are a police force but trained like special forces, because that's what they had to have at the time. Of course, all that's a long time ago. And we've all forgotten the war, especially the English, when thinking about Germany. And we don't hum the Damn Busters tune anymore, do we, when we see the Germans? And we don't have T-shirts with 2 World Wars and 1 World Cup on, do we, when we see the Germans today? We've forgotten it all. We're all comrades in arms now. So Germany even created a police force to help assist with serious organised crime. And of course they've got the Bundeskriminalamt, so as well as having a counter-terrorism unit, they have serious organised crime units. Bundeskriminalamt, I mentioned them last semester, that's like the German FBI. There's also an EU framework decision, and we're going to see the same thing. What's interesting is everyone else says 3 or more persons. The framework decision says you need more than 2 persons. Why don't they just do with everyone else, say 3 or more? More than 2 persons, I've worked that out as 3 or more. Again, you're seeing the same thing, acting in concert. Structured association, it's got to be over a period of time. And they've got to commit offences. Now here's one that goes into trying to identify offences. It's got to be punishable basically by imprisonment, that means deprivation of liberty, at least 4 years, or a more serious penalty in order to obtain directly or indirectly a financial or other material benefit. 4 years or more. So that's theft. Theft's in there. If we look at the UK, that's 7 years. So obviously, we're talking serious theft and we're looking at them. So we've got a framework decision. Again, I think they're looking at making this a directive since the Treaty of Lisbon to assist. So we're talking really serious crime. This international dimension, we need 3 or more, we need a hierarchy, and it's got to be, as I say, over this prolonged period of time. It's not just a big one-off job. The Brinks-Mac bullion robbery a few years ago, that wasn't organised crime because it was a one-off job. It was a multi-million-pound theft. Serious, but it's not organised crime. Okay, as long as you've got that point, it's got to be consistent. So basically, just think Mafia, or think, if you're thinking of round here, our major, and I'm talking major drug dealer stroke trafficker who's in business and who makes millions and millions and millions. So we need that cooperation. Now, for those of you fancying the terrorism we looked at, look at the TSAT reports. They had to identify that away from organised crime because it was growing and growing. So TSAT reports for terrorism and the organised crime assessment threats. You'll get those off the Europol site to help you look at how that's developing on there. So they've got to work together. You just can't not do it if you're going to be successful. And I think that's one of the reasons why, if you looked in the UK, the formation of the Serious Organised Crime Agency. Because prior to that in the UK, there's 42 forces in England and Wales, each with a chief constable. You look at the changes in policing as regards the structure of policing, and certainly for those of you who are CJ and law, I'm sure Matthew must have covered this. I'm crossing my fingers saying this, must have covered this when he's looked at policing, the changes in the managerial structure, the reform of policing. Now, in even local policing, you see greater central governance of policing in the UK. It's easier to manage. And in the late 90s, they had the National Crime Squad and National Criminal Intelligence section. They merged, and now we have Serious Organised Crime Agency, who include officers from Customs. There's someone else I'm missing out. Customs, police, and there's one other group, and I've missed the border group. Okay, so they're working together. Okay, they are working together. Easy to handle. They'll obviously look at serious crime and organised crime, and we'll see one example when we look at human trafficking later. So you look at all the member states. Just mentioned to you, you've got federal forces in Germany, who are the starting point. You've got the gendarmerie in France, the carabinieri in Italy. And I'm not going to go through every country, but if you actually go on holiday, you'll see civil police. Civil police are not those agencies that we're talking about, it's the big ones. Okay, so if you go to Italy and you go to Turin, there's a Turin civil police, but they also have the carabinieri. And the carabinieri is the national police force of Italy, the one with the big feather and a hat. And if you're in the carabinieri, Italy, you want to drive Lamborghinis, wouldn't you? Ferraris. You think so? Fiats. Anyway, never mind. I'd have a fucking word if I was in the carabinieri. You know, we are the carabinieri. I think a Ferrari would look good with all the livery on. But anyway, that's up to them. So that's the groups we're talking about. They've got to work together. So how do they do it? Well, we saw last semester Europol pull it together, and this has grown, and you know now, those who did Europol, it's grown. It's just the norm. It's just the way it is. A few years ago, got to share information. Now, sharing of information intelligence, everyone's worked out we work better together. We're more efficient. We're more effective if we operate this way. We've got to, because there's an international dimension to crime. Therefore, it's got to be an international policing response to deal with it. And we also saw, excuse me, we also saw with Eurojust an international judicial response within the EU to assist the policing agencies working together. Now, obviously, these jobs take months and months to actually come to fruition. We're finished now. Do you know this, do you? Well, have a listen or read the notes. If you want a discussion, have it afterwards, okay? And that was on film too. What's saying then? Yeah, so how do they do this? They take months. These are not, if you watch the telly, it takes longer than an hour or 2 hours, okay? These jobs take months. Now, last week I talked about counter-terrorism, big emphasis, prevention, because we don't want acts of terrorism to take place. They try and prevent these acts because it's keeping them on the toes all the time. But you see more detection. In reality, you see more detection with the drugs, the people trafficking, the firearms trafficking, the counterfeiting, because the counterfeiting is major counterfeiting, okay? You see more detection in this. Or they didn't quite get to the end result, but they got caught 3/4 of the way through committing a crime, okay? So it's gone beyond the planning stage, something has happened. And certainly when they come into the territory of the EU, then they may make their move then. So it's about intelligence again, and over the next few pages then I'll summarise what I've got there, is about intelligence. It is the key to policing these crimes. It's boring as well. Surveillance can be boring. I told you it's not like the telly. You can, one bit's true, you can put weight on because you're eating takeaway food all the time and you're sat on your backside, okay? But it's months and months, getting to know people, getting to know this group, who's associated with who. So now you can see why you need this international dimension, because it's not just taking place in one part of a country or our country, it's taking place across Europe. It's taking place with countries outside the EU as well. And that's why you're seeing agreements organised by Justice and Home Affairs with other states outside the EU. That's why remember I mentioned Schengen, and we have the Nordic passport, or better known as the Copites, in with the Schengen side. Iceland, Norway are also in the Schengen side. Okay? So it's got to have this truly dimensional, international dimension. It's going to take months, sharing of intelligence and watching. So it takes a long time. And it's about watching. So I'll ask you again, is anyone here living with a drug trafficker, drug dealer? Human trafficker? Organising for prostitution, pornography with children? No. Firearms traffickers? No. Clean living lives? Good, good. Or do you know? Because it's back to that thing again. Your innocent association could be recorded and on systems. I'm sure I mentioned this, I mentioned Schengen, and I mentioned the Schengen information system, that your details could be kept. Okay, yes, you never bin anything in the police. You just never know when it'll come in handy. And I've gone into a bit more detail over those next few pages in your notes to reinforce this point of you being on intelligence systems. So if you do get knocked back going to the States, it could be the reason why they've got you on a system somewhere, okay? So it is important to understand that, but it's intelligence and it's laborious, but when it happens big time. It is, major. There was about, 14 million pounds worth of cocaine was seized at the drugs at Felixstowe. Well, how did they know about that? Because they've been watching it for months and months and months. That's where perhaps the strike will come in, but they've already started committing offences. Do you see the difference I'm talking about compared with terrorist cells, where they've got to try and get them on conspiracy? Why in counter-terrorism? Because it is about cooperation, there is a link. In counter-terrorism, they need the wider powers, because we know how difficult it is to prove conspiracy in a criminal court. Perhaps not as wide powers, but they still get powers. In the UK, it's the Regulation Investigatory Powers Act. Still have to go through the same procedures. There will still be covert listening. You're also likely to find perhaps police officers acting undercover in this. Yeah, it is sexy stuff. It is sexy policing. It beats walking in weather like this, or tonight when it'll be even colder, dealing perhaps with yous playing football. This is sexier, but it's also, it's not, it can be laborious too, okay? But that's a danger, but this is what they're going to do. Also the use of informants. Informants are crucial. And again, you've got two categories of informants that you're looking at. If we're looking at criminal gangs, what do you think your informant, if you're in the police, normally gets involved in? That's right, they're criminals. Right, just have a quick, is anybody here not a criminal? All your hands are down, so you must be criminals then. Right, we'll try again. Anyone here who's not a criminal? Oh, surprise, surprise, there we go. I'm innocent too. Yes, not me. I'm not putting my hand up because he's going to take the piss out of me any second. No. Right, so we're not. Anybody here associated with any major criminals at all? Got invite them around for Christmas? No? Right, so your knowledge of what's going on, how they're operating, I'm assuming is nil or virtually minimal. Am I right? So what good are you going to be informing on criminals unless you see something suspicious? Now that's another category of informant. You see something suspicious, you contact the police, you ring up Crime Stoppers and you let them know. You're not really the informant I'm thinking of. You're an intelligence source, that's all. I mean, not even that really, you're just passing it on. So we're looking at what Regulation Investigatory Powers Act in the UK calls a covert human intelligence source, a CHIS, or as the police call, a snout, okay, an informer. In these, they're normally criminals. Now they might be on the periphery, they might be small-time criminals, but why do you think they inform? I've got an idea why do you think they inform? Because correct, that's one of them. We're looking for favours. If I keep doing my petty little crime, I know that lot are doing X, Y, and Z, and they've asked me to do a few little jobs for them, so I'll tell you all about it if you just turn a blind eye to me. Because they're not paid enormous amounts of money. Okay, the budgets are generally very limited. It's about, so here's a police officer or group of police officers dealing with informants who they're going to let commit crime. Is anyone seeing a problem here? Hang on, but the police officers arrest them. But if they arrest their informants, they're not going to get inside the bigger criminal. Okay, and that's an issue. If you look at it, I don't know those on CJ and law, if you're on the CJ, it's a really interesting area, and you cover it. But this is an ethical issue of police officers dealing with. But you need them. You need someone on the inside. How about now in counter-terrorism? It's a little bit different. There's quite a number of informants are not terrorists, and they will come and volunteer themselves. Now they're still checked out just as if they were, because it's like, why do you want to inform? What's your ulterior motive? And a lot of the ulterior motive is a disagreement with what that group's up to. I want to stop it. Is anyone seeing a dangerous game in either camp? What happens, do you think, if you're caught grassing by these major criminals, all these? Yes. Possibly death, or your kneecaps will disappear. A really good, I suppose it'll be on the grade of what happened from the intelligence they've passed on. But yeah, it's not a healthy exercise to get involved with.
Wouldn't you like the raise against these anyway, but you all can start.
Right, it's not so much used as, the good point, the question here was, isn't it their word against the other criminals? They're not used so much in evidence, informants. They're used for the intelligence. What they pass on, from what they pass on may marry up with other intelligence, and it may direct the resources in a more effective way, so they won't use them. Very rare informants ever used as witnesses. Couple of reasons. One, to protect them, and two, exactly what you're saying. Because the other time, I guess the similar thing is when someone is either on remand or is on remand, and they've got a trial coming up, and it's a cellmate, isn't it? Have you seen them with a cellmate suddenly becomes a witness? Oh yeah, he was telling me, he was bragging to me. Again, how reliable is that evidence? We're back to that issue. Why did they do that? Why did they tell the police? What is their ulterior motive? Yeah, but they very rarely use them as witnesses. Big one they did use them as witnesses was in Ireland, the supergrasses in the 80s, right? Supergrass doesn't mean either a brilliant spliff that gets you off your head in seconds, or rather big tall blades of green stuff. They were supergrass. They were actually involved, either be loyalist or nationalist groups, and were heavily involved with them, and they didn't want to go back to prison, and they told the RUC, I'll tell you everything I know if I go on the witness protection system. And as a result of the supergrasses, quite a few of the people got arrested, quite a lot. But of course, again, that system was seen, because that point that you make, why were they doing it? Isn't it their word against the others? And it's the unreliability of them. But that was one where they used the supergrasses. You'll still get the odd witness who will actually has been an informer and will give evidence. But so that's another murky side you've got to think about. How do they get involved? So as well as static surveillance, using covert equipment, mobile surveillance, analysing copious quantities of intelligence informers are crucial. And of course, handling informers is also strictly controlled now. Never used to be, but it's very strictly controlled. So there's a lot to do, and it takes a lot of,
Sorry, can I just, on that, what you were just saying, you know the likes of Curtis Warden, who's wrote that book,
yeah.
And he's named a lot of people in it and what they're doing. And how has he got away with that without getting anybody into trouble? Because there's a few of them that are not being arrested or charged.
Right, you know Curtis Warren is, do you know, anybody not know who Curtis Warren is? Right, you've all heard of him. You should do if you're living in this city. I think he's a good friend of the Liverpool Echo, because they always love Curtis Warren stories. Well, by the way, he's not a good friend of the editor of the Liverpool Echo for defamation purposes. It's just he's always in the Echo and the Post. Curtis Warren was a small-time thief in the 80s from Toxteth, and it just grew. And he is a major criminal, major drug trafficking, not just a little drug dealer, he's a major drug trafficker. And yeah, he's perhaps one way to make money in prison, bring out a book, mention names, but he's not an informant. He could bring them out. I suppose some of the names that are in there, if we go to defamation law, could say, Curtis, I'm suing you for defamation of character. I'm taking you to court to show I'm not a drug trafficker. You with me? That could be why he's got away with mentioning names that he does. But how reliable is Curtis Warren's? Everyone backs that issue again with informants. He's not really an informant there, but you know, how reliable is he? Okay, so it's a murky world. It's a dirty job, but we've got to do it. We need all these resources if we're to catch these people. But some informants run a real big risk. The closer they are into the heart of the organisation. And some people just get a clear conscience to go, I've had enough of this, and I want to inform. So, as well as the types of intelligence coming in from various sources, I'm trying to get across it takes a lot of time. It's very expensive. I think to remind you, I think I mentioned it last semester, just to do a mobile surveillance is not one vehicle, 2 inches from the boot of the target's car, because they suss you out very quickly. Remember, I just mentioned before, do they take countermeasures? And they do. You're talking around 6 or 7 vehicles for one car to do a successful mobile surveillance. So they're very expensive. So we bring them in. So what categories of crime? So if it's going to be expensive, we need categories of crime. Page 25. I've got a list of them there for you. So, here they are. The top 5 crimes in the EU Crimes against the persons. Now this is illegal immigration, trafficking, child pornography, and extortion. Now, illegal immigration. I don't know, could be. Is anyone here getting married shortly? Some of you gone, fuck yeah, fucking no way. Whoa, brakes, woohoo. That was quite an interesting reaction there from the floor. It was like, it got your attention anyway. It's just a relationship, it's casual, we have an understanding. What the fuck's that about? That means I can go and shag anyone I want, but we have an understanding. Hey, we're cool with it. Right? It's called Catholic boys like me, that's a fucking no-no. Right? That's hell. Right, you're going. Right, so, I've got to close up, yeah. Illegal immigration, apparently, because my brother-in-law, don't worry, it's not just a family story, there is a link to this. My brother-in-law likes wedding cake. He's getting married again, right? Just say, I love you, and will you marry me? Okay, just change it, Frank, but he doesn't. He's a lovely fella. And he's getting married again in March. And this time, he goes to register the wedding with his fiancée. And they got grilled independently about getting married. Frank was asked all sorts of questions about her. When was she born? Where she live? Where do you live? They both live in the same house, you know. Because he's getting on a bit. You know, when you get to my age, you don't fuck about with this. I'll go back to my parents and we'll have an engagement for 2 years, then we'll get married and all that. Because we've done that once. We just get into it now. And of course, time's against you when you get to my age. You can't hang around too long. So he's in there and he's getting asked questions. And Frank's dying to take the piss. But he thought, if I take the piss now, I ain't going to get married. Why do you think they're doing that?
It's an actual relationship, not just marrying someone who wants to come into the country.
Correct. Because, again, if you're short of a few bob, you might want to go into wedding planning, but not the formal type that have butterflies coming out of boxes. I mean, what the fuck's that about as well? Right. Gold and platinum embossed wedding invitations. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Don't go wedding planning formal, informal.
So is his partner father then, is she?
Hey?
Is his partner father?
Yeah, she's from Kirby. She's not even from Liverpool. Yeah, no. They got interviewed separately. Frank, he said, I wanted to say this, but I thought, no. He said, it'd be like going to the airport and they go, yeah, anything but, yeah, I packed myself, text myself. Because they haven't got a sense of humour, have they? He got the same impression there was no sense of humour here. Trouble was, he couldn't remember a date of birth. He got the year wrong. There was one or two other little things. Yeah, she worked, I think, how long have you known? He said, a couple of years. Fucking hell, Frank, you've been living with her for fucking 5 years. So, you know, what's a couple of years? 2 normally, but anyway. Yeah, but that's why they were doing it. So it's a business you might want to get into, could be worthwhile. Bringing them in. So, can you marry me? Yes, I'll marry you. A one-fits-all wedding dress. It could be too big, too small, doesn't matter. It's a one-fits-all, you only need the one. So that's what we're looking at, illegal immigration. That's one scam that's involved there. I think the trafficking, we're okay with that. Most of it is for the sex trade. Drug trafficking, no shocks there. It's in at number 2. Drug trafficking, financial crime. Now, money laundering, fraud, and counterfeiting currency. At the time, they were really concerned about the euro. That's before what happened in the Eurozone over the last 12 months. Okay, but no, the euro was the big one. It's a new currency. So counterfeiting, again, we're talking multi-million pound industry, multi-million. Organised robberies, burglaries and theft. I said before, didn't I? Let's look at the definition, 4 years or more. Okay, so robberies, theft. Now again, if we're doing robberies, we mentioned, and we talked about the bank example I gave, that's a one-off. It's got to be over a sustained period of time. So one of the ways we will raise money to help us is we'll do robberies. Seems fair, doesn't it? Terrorist groups did it, provisional IRA. How did they raise money? NORAID, sorry, I'm going to mention it, NORAID in states like Illinois, Massachusetts, New York in particular, which is Boston, which is Chicago, Boston and New York. That was one way, but that wasn't the only way. They used to do robberies, rob banks and post offices. That was one way to raise money. So sometimes you got a cash flow problem? Never mind going to Wonga, all these other companies who are cropping up. It should be, got a cash flow problem? Do the HSBC Bank in Lord Street. On Friday, it's got loads of money. Best of luck. Okay, robbery, it's one way of raising money. Burglaries. Are we talking about the opportunist burglary? Or are we talking about, should we get Colleen's necklaces and jewellery that Wayne bought her for Christmas that came to about £500,000? Should we take Wayne Rooney I'm talking about, Wayne Rooney's rather expensive Range Rover that's got gold and diamond encrusted levers on? That's the burglaries we're talking about. Got a cash flow problem? Go to Cheshire and screw all houses belonging to Man United players. Okay? That's where most of them live, Cheshire, Alderley Edge, in case you're wondering. And you've got a cash flow problem, which you might have come February, March. There's no money left, is there, in the account? You know, that's that other big issue. Commodity trafficking. Right, here's the intro. Vehicles. I think I mentioned this last year. We are not, and no offence to anyone who's got one of these, the Nissan Micra is not in demand. Trust me. And there are similar vehicles. We're talking about that bit, and I think I said last semester, you fancy a Bentley Continental convertible. Who here would like a Bentley? Oh, quite a few. Who here'd like a Ferrari? Yes, they're all going. Who here'd like a Rolls Royce? Leslie, do you like every car I'm talking about so far? Nissan Micra? Hand stay down for that one. Anybody here fancy an Aston Martin DBS? Sorry, British. Okay, I know Aston Martin's not totally British. Have you seen the new Jaguar sports car that's going to come out? Fucking dog's bollocks. Now I know it's Indian owned, but it's fucking British. And you know what I'm like for me Jaguars. I fucking love them. Yeah, I want one of them. I can't afford one. I'll have to wait fucking 20 million years for it second hand and come my price range. But fucking hell, it's a dog. Fuck it. That and the DBS. I mean, I'm sure I told you this. It still guts me every time I watch that Casino Royale. The fucking bitch gets it, not the car. I'm not swerving, I'm in a DBS, mate. Lovely car. Right? Anyway, she was a waste of time, and if you've seen the film, she was a fucking grass for the other side anyway and set him up. So she should have got run over there then, but I suppose you cut the film down a bit, you wouldn't see, what's his name? Daniel Craig get his bollocks hit underneath his own. Right. Yeah, so they're the vehicles we're talking about. Sexy vehicles, you can't go to the showroom and say, can I have one of them please? Here's the cash. Yeah, we've got a 6-month waiting list. But I've got the cash. We've got a 6-month waiting list. So what are you going to do? I want one now. Organised crimes will do it. Criminal gangs will do it for you. Okay, hands up smokers. Just me, you fucking liar, pants on fire. There's a few of us, right? I wanted to, but we couldn't organise it in time, do field trips on this module. And I wanted me and the smokers to go to Estonia. Even at this time of year, I wanted to go to Estonia. Benson edges are 70 pence a pack. 3 suitcases I'll have. All for my own fucking use. And if you've seen the amount I smoke, you'll know that's a week's supply. Right? It's like that cough that came in then. Bad timing, that wasn't it? Right. And it's not wrong because I paid Estonian tax on my Benson's gold. Right? So whatever brand you want. Right? That's an advert. I'm doing an advert for Benson's gold. They won't be happy with me in the NHS, and the health sector will be on the phone shortly. Yeah, and I'm paying tax, so I'm not avoiding tax. and I can bring it back and prove it for my own use, us, hang on, I've lost you. Us three will be all right. We're off to Estonia. Right, the rest of you can go where the fuck you want, don't care. But that's the cheapest fags in the EU, 70 pence a pack. Do you know how much fags, right, non-smokers, do you know how much packets of Bensons are on average? Times it by 10, please, it's about £7. £7.20 in some shops. Fucking hell. Back robbing bastards. Most of it goes on tax to pay for people on the social do fuck all. Right, you wonder why I get better? And I'm Labour as well. Okay, so we're off to Estonia. That's our field trip. Some of you mostly want to go this time of year, perhaps the Costa del Sol, southern Italy, Malta. Well, the fags are more expensive there. Yeah. However, if we decided to take 3 articulated lorries over to Estonia, fill them up with fags, I'm struggling to say it's for my own use. That is commodity, this is tobacco smuggling. Bring them in, I then go around the pubs and say, Johnson Benson's, and we'll charge £3, we'll make a fortune on it. £2.30 per pack, profit. And we've got millions. See, all of a sudden, a couple of lorry loads, we've made a few million quid. You're nodding here, you're going, that sounds fucking good to me.
Sounds like a plan.
We might arrange it for European social legal studies. Are you up for it? A few million, cut between us, could make 3 million each. Okay, that's tobacco smuggling. Yeah, lorry each. Hey. Come back to work, I'm a fuck. No, I'm dedicated to you students, you know I am. I do this for nothing. I would actually. This is the best bit of the job. The boring bit's doing the admin shit. Anybody here who doesn't drink? That's 4 people. Who doesn't drink very much? They can't afford it. I like Jameson, so fucking expensive, right? No. That means the rest of you are a gang of pissheads, and you go on holiday, and I'm sure you've done it within the EU. It's got to be within the EU, this, okay? Come on, hands on heart. Who's gone on holiday with just a couple of items of clothing, and you're carrying your case like that, your suitcase like that? Okay, way there you go. Under 20 kilos, don't give a shit. And you come back like this, fucking hell. Come on, who's done that? There you go, thank you very much, Kerry. How many bottles did you bring back? 12. All for your own use, with the litre bottles? 1.5 litre bottles? Litre bottles, 12 litres for your own use. There's your day's supply. Yep, got it. But it's not illegal. If you're within the EU and you bring it back for your own use, it's not illegal. Okay? Come on, who else has done it? Oh, come on then. I want to know. Come on, Nicola.
Absinthe and ciggies.
Absinthe and ciggies. Was ciggies for the others?
I don't smoke.
I know, because you don't smoke, so you brought ciggies home for the family. When you tell me you were going, I had to put my order in. Where did you go? Spain. Yeah, Spain, Canary Isles, sorry. Benson's are dead cheap there, so if you're going to the Canary Isles, let me know. I'll give you a couple of bob, okay? Yeah, so you light suitcase and you like that coming home. How many litres do you bring back?
I don't know, just a few bottles.
57! I just made that up, but I got your attention. Just a few bottles, not as many as 10, or was it 12? 12! Any higher than 12? Hey? Just take an empty case. Anyone else gone higher than 12 litres? Kerry, you're the record holder. Okay.
I hit duty free on the way back from Strasbourg as well for the duty.
Oh, on the EU trip? You're practising then as well. Good. How many litres do you bring back? 4. Yeah. Just see over Christmas, wouldn't it? Just. Right. Okay, so 12 is the highest here. Is that alcohol smuggling? No. But if Kelly said I had 12 articulated lorries coming back, could be. Okay? Because they have those booze cruises. Have you heard of those? They're not as popular now because for all France's prices have shot up, but they have those hypermarkets on northern coast of France. And the Brits will go over for the day, get the fucking big trolley, we're in France, so we'll get some onions, a little piece of brie, fucking wine, everything else, come back, weekly shopping, bit of brie, bit of onion, and a fucking load of booze. This was dead cheap, but it wasn't illegal on there. So, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking vast quantities, so you can bring it in. It's not as good now as it used to be because prices are very similar. I mean, you can't get much cheaper booze, I think, in the UK. It's fucking cheap. Anyone been to a Scandinavian country recently and tried to get a pint and went, fucking hell, how much? It's, what is it now, about, price now is about £8, £9, £10 for a pint of beer.
Yeah, we went on a Strasbourg trip with a couple of nights out, and we noticed that when we went to the supermarkets to get the wine, it was really cheap.
Yeah.
When we went to the pubs, I had a triple tequila, and that was like £9.
Fucking hell. Right, okay, so, yeah, if you try going for a drink in France, in a pub, depends where you go, but certainly Paris, fucking hell, it's so expensive, it really is. My wife likes to drink brandy, but we were a bit silly because we didn't know, it was right opposite the Opera House, and we'd been walking, and I thought, oh, just fancy a beer, so we'll get a beer. This place looks nice. I should have known, I said, okay, I should have, just fancy a brandy and Coke. So, yeah, I'll have a beer and a brandy and Coke. And I should have fucking known when out comes a tray of olives, crisps and stuff. Well, it looks nice, I didn't fucking order that. And then out comes the beer, 60 fucking euros. And it was fucking Carlsberg that sponsored the red shite. And I'm fucking look, what? It's a fucking Paris Ritz, wasn't it? Shit. Should have looked at the fucking sign with al fresco, you know, you're on holiday, aren't you? Fucking 60 euros. I said, you're drinking every fucking drop of that, love. You're like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about, alcohol smuggling. So don't just think it's all drugs. Oh no, ciggies and alcohol as well. Firearms and trafficking. Yeah, well, we've got to throw that one in. That's in there too. I put a case study on here for you because the Estonian one, not because the Benson Hedges are 70 pence a pack. So anyone watching this now who's a Benson Hedges smoker, I can see all the flights to Estonia now suddenly shooting up on EasyJet. Not because of that, because it was an interesting one. Estonia, Lithuania, and, the other one. Estonia, Lithuania, do you know, I hate this word, Mafia, right? The Baltic states, being a member of the Soviet Union, gets independence from the Soviet Union and wants to join the EU. So one of the problems was, and I used the Estonian one as an example and I've highlighted there, but I'll summarise it for you. One of the problems with Estonia was corruption because of the Russian Mafia, okay? Ruthless people again, as with any Mafia thing. I think I might have put a couple of clips up for you on here. I think I have, actually, with the Russian Mafia. Just checking. Yeah, I have. We've seen preparing to. Ruthless group, okay? Just as ruthless. Same thing what I said before, the influence part. Politicians, government workers and police officers were corrupt. They were in the pay of the Russian Mafia. So what did the Estonians do? Well, they stamped out the corruption. It took them a few years, but they did it. They sent a lot of Russian Mafia people back to Russia. They said, you're not Estonian, go back to Russia. Because part of the period of the Soviet Union, certainly in Stalin's days, was to populate all these areas. I mean, I mentioned Chechnya I nearly said last year this time. Last week in Chechnya, a lot of Russians were sent to Chechnya to dilute this Chechen identity. And it's the same with the Baltic states, to try and eradicate their national identity during the days of the Soviet Union. Stalin's in particular, and a lot of Russians in. So you were over 50% of the population was Russian. And what they did was they sent them back to Russia. You're going to be Russia's problem. And they had to clear it up. So you can see how they went through this, and I've gone through that in detail for you to look at how they could do it. Because the issues were, and certainly with Eastern Europe, is linking on to what we're going to look at here, is trafficking human beings. Now, in all seriousness, this is really sad. Because if you look at trafficking of human beings, you go to poorer nations, Eastern Europe, even those who are not in the EU, who are even poorer, So we're talking the Moldovas and all these countries that suddenly appeared in the World Cup that we never heard about, who are now independent states. We're looking at the Eastern European countries, even up to the Ukraine. And then we'll just focus on Europe for now. These are, well, mainly women who were offered jobs either as au pair, working as a nurse, primary school teacher. So these people have had some skills. Now, we've got to understand the cost of living, because there are states, I mean, I mentioned Estonia, if you go to like to Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, within the EU, your euro will go further in those states. It's still cheaper. You can still go to Slovakia, and going out is cheaper than UK, France, Germany, Holland, Italy. It's still a lot cheaper. So the cost, the annual income is nowhere near what you get in the UK or France or Germany, for example. So an offer of a better life, pay this company, they would get their savings, pay it up, and come across into the EU, smuggled in basically. It wasn't salubrious transport that they're coming in. End up, so we'll bring them to the UK because we're from the UK. Bring them into the UK, come off wherever they come from, the lorry, whatever, and straight into a brothel. And sort of drug them a little bit, and they're just basically there for sex. That's all it was. And certainly if they had children, if children were identified, children would be separated, gone. And Europol was instrumental only in 2011 in a global thing, because it wasn't just in Europe, it involved North America, and it involved the Far East, a pornography ring, paedophile pornography ring, a multi-million-pound industry. And same with these women, they're coming over. Now they're coming for a better life, but it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And one of the problems we had, and I've put some studies down here for you to see what it was like up until only a couple of years ago. Even countries like Sweden. Sweden, everyone talks about how the state system's brilliant. You know, everything's paid for, their health system's good, their education system, their benefit system. It works great in Sweden. And seen traditionally as a caring state. Their view was, send them back. Send them back. Find them. They were not treated as a victim, they were treated as a criminal and sent back. And their view being, well, you came here voluntarily, you wanted to come to Sweden, you're a prostitute, go back. And that seemed to go against really the groups who were saying, no, these are victims of crime. No, they're criminals. Italy, same view. Holland, I mean, liberal Holland, same view. UK, very similar view, send them back. And there were studies that were done to look at it, because even though there's an EU framework decision on page 29, you actually look at what it is. It's very clear. It's about recruitment, transportation, transfer, harbouring, subsequent reception of a person. So it's covering every aspect from, do you want to go to the UK and have a better life? The one who drives them over, any handing over that's being done, being kept in a certain place, and then when they arrive at the country destination, they are received. And it includes the exchange or transfer of control of that person. Coercion's used, a force or threat, and it can include abduction. Deceit or fraud, come and be a nanny, come and be a nurse. They arrive, and that was a big lie. There's an abuse of authority, and normally it's a person who's vulnerable. And they try and describe it, has no real and acceptable alternative but to submit to the abuse. And payments or benefits are given or received to achieve the consent of a person having control of the other. You can read into that. We're looking basically at slavery here. Looking at slavery. Now, the framework decision came out in 2002. And I'm talking up to, what are we now? Okay, 2012. I'm talking really up to 2009. Only a couple of years ago, in effect, in real terms, 2.5 years ago, did things change. The Met in this country, the Metropolitan Police Force, had a tiny little group to look at it nationally. Some member states had no policing agencies looking at this area of human trafficking because their view was they're criminals. We'll send them back. So studies were done, and what was really influential were a number of factors. One from the studies that were done, the UN, pressure from the UN, who were looking at the big picture, because they really did see the big picture. They were seeing children and women, predominantly women and children. Very few men are taken for the sex industry. If men are conned into this, it's normally for a sweatshop labour, where they virtually just give them a mattress on the floor, something to eat, and maybe 50 pence a week, if that. So, predominantly women and children, they see the bigger picture. They're looking at it from the Far East, from South America as well, because I've mentioned it. It really is a global industry. And there's lots of vulnerable people. We all want a better life. I mean, what day are we now? Monday. Who's doing the lottery tomorrow? The Euro lottery. Am I? Only us two?
How much is it?
Is it £2?
How much is it to win?
13 million. You're doing it now, Harry. You just go and put a lucky dip in, Harry. Yeah, well, I'll be so-and-so, and a lucky dip for the Euro lottery. Who does the lottery on a Wednesday or a Saturday? Well, but why are you playing the lottery? Why are you playing the lottery?
It's got to be it to win it. No, you can't win it.
And that's it. No, it can't win it. Because we want a few million quid. Why do we want a few million quid? You're not happy with your lot now. Okay, you might be broke because you're a student, but you go to university, you've got a roof over your head, you've got your whole life ahead of you to look forward to. Good jobs, money. No, we want more money. We like more, we like better, don't we? And it's the same with these women. I'm focusing on it because that was a majority. Same with these women. They wanted a better life. A lot of them, their view was, I will go to this country and I will send money back home to their family. It wasn't just, oh, I'm going to get loads of money. In real terms, perhaps 20, 30 times what they got per week in their home state. They're talking about sending money back home to help the family. Didn't happen. They were vulnerable people, and the UN saw this. They started to put pressure on the EU, and the EU actually picked up on it. And they started to do it. Now, funny thing is, I've got to mention drugs now. There's been a global war on drugs. We've had a war on terrorism, war on drugs, not a war against people trafficking. A bit of general knowledge. There was the same percentage of drug users in the USA in 1901 as there was in 2001. How much do you think of the American economy was spent on dealing with drug dealers in 1901 and drug takers? How much do you think, percentage? Have a guess.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. How much less, Leslie?
0.05%.
0.05. Anyone going higher than 0.05? 5? Less than 5. No. Not a penny in 1901. Billions and billions in 2001 though. Wonder why. That's the whole point, is because drugs were seen as underlying cause of crime, affects workforces, they're not efficient. There's a number of economic reasons why they were looking at this, but not people trafficking. Millions were spent, well, you could say billions really, globally, spent in policing drugs-related offences. So that wasn't a problem. So why sought the EU, why are we struggling to get this across? Why in the Justice and Home Affairs can't we get, they're all going, oh yeah, we'll sign up to that, we'll sign up to that, and did nothing. It took a lot of pressure, and it took really pressure groups, the UN, the EU itself, to really bring this point home. And I think when you have events like the cockle pickers in Morecambe dying, and you then give these images again of what is really going on, that most people go, that shouldn't be happening. What's the government doing about it? Because that's what most people do, isn't it? What's the government doing about it? So I think all these factors put together did put pressure on them. In the UK now, Serious Organised Crime Agency actually has a large department that looks at trafficking of human beings. And you can go through the member states of the EU and you'll find they've got a larger department than what they used to have looking at trafficking of human beings. Because it's realised it's a multi-billion really, pound industry. And there was one or two connections too with other criminals, routes and so on, the routes they were using through the EU and how they were brought in. Really risky business, you know, either by sea or by road. By sea is one of the most popular to come in. But you see it globally. I mean, you see people, I know they're not being trafficked, but you see people from Cuba still getting a deck chair and trying to get across the Caribbean to Florida. So it really is a global issue. But don't forget South America. There's a lot of vulnerable people in South America, poor people there who want a better life. There's two series studies to say, if you fancy this for your coursework, just, now listen, I'm going to emphasise this again. If you want trafficking in human beings, just focus on trafficking of human beings. 3,500 words isn't going to go that far, and there's plenty on it. Okay, there's now plenty on it. But I've put two studies to get you going. It's Monroe and De Nicola's studies. What they found. And it does have a happy ending, as I said, because it actually does start. The EU now takes this seriously. Drug trafficking itself, well, I just mentioned there. Again, the social issues, I'll put those down for you. And there's a framework decision on drug trafficking. But if we look at the framework decision, what we're looking at, production, manufacture, extraction, etc. of the drugs for sale, this is on page 37. Dispatching, importation or exporting drugs, the cultivation of opium, poppy, cocoa bush or cannabis plant, the possession and purchase of drugs with a view to conducting one of those above, and to manufacture and transport. Now, this is drug trafficking. Notice it's not drug dealing. It's higher than drug dealing. There's been loads of examples, and we've had them in Liverpool as well. There was one in Blackmore Drive, West Derby. Anyone familiar with West Derby, Blackmore Drive? Yes. Obviously, I'm got to be careful, it's being filmed, so I won't mention any names now. But he was a Liverpool criminal. He got involved with drugs, and from drug dealing to really getting involved with drug trafficking. And he bought this house in West Derby. If you're on like Blackmore Drive, you'll see it. We used to call it Ponderosa. It really went bad taste. You just knew it was a drug dealer, drug trafficker's house. You know those, what's the Americans call them? The Winnebagos? We have our mobile homes, right? And the British one's about that long, isn't it? Right? But the American ones are like the length of this room, with everything in. No, Eddie, and I just gave his name. He bought one and put it on the driveway. Got a swimming pool for the back garden. Rampant lions, what do you think? His wife had a Ferrari, and she kept going to the Aldi and the Lidl in Stockbridge Village. Well, you can take Canny out the girl, but you can't take the girl out of Cantrell Farm. Yeah, she kept going there with her tan, parking a Ferrari. There weren't many Ferraris in Stockbridge Village Lidl's car park, but she was there. And he thought, I'm going to be savvy, I'm going to use the phone box across the road to conduct my business. The busies will not suss that out. They'll tap my phone on my house, but not a phone box. Soft lad, but still watching you. And he goes to the phone box, he does his business, so guess what, there's a phone tap on the phone box, and you get all the business, and he was convicted later on. But what I'm saying to you is, they're still about. And actually, drug trafficking, if you got your next door neighbour who's a drug trafficker, they're normally quite good neighbours. One, they send the kids to private school. Okay, they got lions rampant and blingy 4x4 cars. Not like a proper 4x4 Range Rover, they put more bling on it. Right? It's virtually have the t-shirt, I am a drug trafficker. You know, that's how I make my money. Yeah, they're normally quite good neighbours. They keep themselves to themselves. If you do have any problem, you've normally got a few pit bulls and Rottweilers in the security who could help you out. But yeah, they normally keep themselves to themselves. But there you go, they're all about you. So these are not remote people. They're in Liverpool, they're in Manchester, they're all over. okay? These people do exist. So that's what we're talking about. Notice it's not possession of drugs or possession with intent to supply. They're lower down the league table. They are League One Championship. We're talking Premier League here, okay? So that's quite clear. I mean, I mentioned earlier about the cannabis farms found in Liverpool only in the last few weeks. It's a multi-million-pound industry. If you fancy this area, you'll find drugs action plans that's been taken out, and they still have them, as well as a framework decision. You'll find it in the organised crime threat assessment in Europol to get the up-to-date information on it. So as well as that, I mean, I'm not going to go to town on that because I think you're gathering it's linked to what I said earlier. Other organised activities I've put down there for you, and I went through when I went through the 7 things, which is your firearms, so don't lose sight of them as well. So it could be an area for your coursework. If it is, if you're doing drugs, just do drugs. Trafficking human beings, that. Got Blether next week. I think this will be on YouTube about Wednesday, Thursday, Neil. Okay, thanks very much. I've got some terrorism lecture notes if you haven't picked them up.